a little flourishy kick-out move that I've been playing with for a few years. Usually I use it in the context of a selection. It's a little similar to Flirt from the Bucks in appearance, but it's kind of like a little twist in the middle, and it comes out of the middle or even the bottom. Let's call it Twirt. In the simplest form, the card is just spun out of the center of the deck and flipped out towards the audience, and then flipped back over into the center of the deck. It can also be used as a sort of pop-out, spin-out move to cause a card to fly out of the center of the deck, twirling around as a production. So that can be used, for a table production or 4A's production, or even just a selection. So let's break down the mechanics of the move and the different applications. So the basics of the move use two fingers. Well, these two to be specific. The right middle finger and the left index finger. Or if you're left-handed, obviously switch it. Either way, the hand that's holding the deck, essentially in dealer's grip, the index finger extending over the front of the deck and just up over the top of the deck. And that's going to be the motivator for the action. And your upper hand that's gripping the deck from above, the middle finger will act as the pivot point. Now the position of the fingers is key. You find if you grip too far over the deck towards this far edge, you're not going to have enough space to pivot that card completely clear of the deck, and that back corner will be trapped, preventing it from actually popping out, which is the desired effect. And when you dribble and stop, you're going to be producing the card above where you've stopped. The upper hand comes forward just a little bit, just enough to do this. And that's all it's going to take, is that little forward and backward motion. But with applying pressure from that finger upward onto that card, that little action is enough to pivot that out, and then upward pressure from that index finger causes that card to finish that spin and pop up into a display position. And like I said, finger position is important, but not just in terms of giving the card enough room to pivot out, also in economy of motion and essentially minimizing the actual action that the hands are taking. With the pivot point being down here, if my index finger is too far over and contacting here, it has to go all the way around in this huge arc to affect that pop out. Whereas if I'm closer to the pivot point, the actual distance that that finger has to travel, or rather the actual distance that the deck has to be pulled back to pivot that card out, are minimal. So again, from here, there's a lot more movement. I'm moving about 2 inches to cause that pivot, to affect that pivot from there. Whereas when I'm holding the cards with the fingers closer to the corner there, the same corner, the action is negligible. It's just a little back and forth. You see, the deck hardly moves. Up to speed, you get a nice little pop out. Okay? Now, like I said, finger position is important, but not just in terms of giving the card enough room to pivot out. Also, it facilitates in the actual pop out shooting production. So if you stop and you're here, instead of pushing up with the finger at the end to pop it around, you push out. So same actions, you dribble, you stop, okay? You push up with that finger, and then just do the little forward and back movement, but you do it really quick and flick that finger out at the same time. There we go, and the card will actually spin out. With enough practice, you'll get a really nice spin and some good speed, so you can really launch that card out. As I said, aside from just casually playing with the deck and flourishing, I usually use this in the context of a selection. So I would dribble and the spectator would say stop, and then I would kick out that selection, have them memorize it, lose it back in the deck, only to have it retained on top. Now, I'm accomplishing this by combining the flourish with the pug pass. So the fundamentals of the pug pass is pulling down with the pinky there, causing that card to pivot out. Now, as you saw, I was doing that with that card in that kicked out position. So it doesn't interfere with the execution of the pug pass, and it also provides perfect cover from the front. Okay? So without the card there, you're just applying pressure and the card pops open. Boom. If you want to learn this in depth and go into some fantastic applications, I strongly recommend Chris Brown's Venus project, or Venus Trap project, I believe. And it covers a plethora of applications for controls, color changes, just crazy stuff. If you've ever seen Chris Brown's work, I'm sure you're familiar with how exceptional he is. So I strongly advise checking that out. He's got a ton of applications, and I also use this in a lot of my other work, so it is a useful move, the pug pass. So back to the control. With the card kicked out and displayed after they've had a chance to memorize it, you're going to appear to just turn this card face down and then put it back into the center of the deck. But in actuality, the selection is switched via the pug pass. So as I said, from here, it covers all the actions. So I've already executed the pug pass. The timing is as your hands kind of come, you kind of tilt your hands back as if just to tilt that into a traditional turnover position. And the timing is as you tilt back, and just as your hand comes up to touch and receive the selection, that pops out. Okay? And that's covered pretty well from most angles by the card in your hand. You essentially allow that card to go back down on top of the passed out card, the pug pass card, and then turn them both over on top of the deck. From the front, it looks like one natural action, and the card is already switched for an indifferent one, leaving your selection on top. So your hands tilt back to receive this card to turn over, but not too far so as to not expose the pug pass card underneath. The cards turn over, hands tilt down slightly again, rocking back forward. That just allows them both to fall flush as opposed to turning over like this. And then the left thumb goes on top of that indifferent card. Selection is second from the top. The thumb immediately goes on top and pulls that indifferent card forward, and then you're just going to spread the cards like a normal fan for a selection. Okay? It might feel a little weird with that card there on top, but it doesn't really interfere and actually can make for a really nice flourish. Essentially, this card looks like it's just gliding down the deck across the spread. But that extra card doesn't cause that much interference with the actual execution of the spread, and in fact, it can facilitate it because of the lack of friction. You just squeeze a bit, and the cards will literally squirt out. It takes a bit of practice just to get the control, but it gives a really nice display. It's a really nice way to apparently lose a card down in the deck. So after you fan the card, you separate where you want that card to go in, and then reassemble the fan, leaving that card out jog, square up nice and clean, and your selection is already on top, ready to go. Now I'm going to move on to teaching a quick little transpo that uses this, essentially going from that position with the control into a 2-card transpo. Now a lot of my transpos, I like to use the ace of spades if I don't know what the other card's going to be, just because I know it's generally a nice contrast from any other card in the deck. For example, if you had a 9 of clubs and a 7 of spades, they're different, but they're not a dramatic contrast. Ideally, you know, I like to do transpos with the red card and black card, but for this I'm having one selected, so it's random. But to control the identity of the other card, I start with the second from the top. So ace of spades, second from the top, an indifferent card on top. You dribble for a selection, they call stop. You do the pop out, have them memorize that card, and you go immediately into the control we just went over, pug passing that card, allowing this card to fall over onto it, turn over, do the fan, gliding over the indifferent card into the center of the deck. When you close the fan, it's perfectly easy to just get a break under those top 2 cards, which are, for reference, the selection and the ace of spades, so that you can then, if you wish, immediately go into a double lift, showing the second card, or, as I sometimes like to do, I do sort of a gag selection, where I ask them to say stop a second time, and I just stop at the top card, really a double. Okay? So I just kind of time that, I get a break, and I dribble, and I time, so that when they say stop, I'm already at the end, and I say stop. Right there, the top card, we can use that as well. And from there, it's a simple matter, just do a sort of a stud-style turnover card right on top of the deck, and it puts you in perfect position for the paintbrush change. And that's what you're going to do. You can gesture to the card in the center, so you keep one eye on your selection, one eye on the ace, give it a flick with the thumb, and then you're going to paintbrush change it. Now the basics of that are the cards come down to the bottom of the deck, and as they swipe up, your right thumb just pushes just enough to lever that top card over and flick it onto the top of the pack. After you've executed the change and allowed it to register, I give it a little twirl upwards, just a little middle finger catches it here and comes forward, and this puts me in position to be ready to switch out that card. So this is up here in display. You're going to come back and currently lay it on top of the deck, but you're actually going to execute another pug pass. So as you come down, you pug pass the card, the right hand provides the cover, coming over the deck from the front. You're going to immediately grip the half of the deck above this apparent selection, your left thumb is right on the edge of the deck there and touching the selection, holding it in place. As this comes out, you're going to apparently pull this card over and flick it out to display it. In reality, your thumb pulls it onto the deck as your fingers push that card up, caught by the index finger, and then the thumb pushes it out. Okay? That sounds complicated, but it's largely automatic. Don't think so much about this card, just think about pushing this card up over the thumb and flicking it out. Because if you do that, your left thumb naturally pulls that card in. So that card is automatic. The main thing you have to worry about is catching that card and flicking it over. Now this is all covered just by the action of taking that off, which provides most of the cover here, and that slight wrist kill in the action of flipping that card over. And again, that's all pretty natural for what you would apparently do if you were going to apparently actually flip this card over. So if you move that out of the equation. Now you'll notice if you were to actually flip that card over, it would go on the bottom and wouldn't be trapped in the center still, but that's a minor discrepancy. But the actual action of flipping it is almost identical to the action of switching it, okay? But thankfully, because of that thumb there and the way it flips over, that card stays in the center, and you just close up the half of the pack, puts you in a very nice display position with the cards in their respective positions, illustrating and emphasizing the transposition. Up to speed. As I mentioned, aside from just casually